All right, welcome back, everybody. Thirsty Thursday number 12. This week we're talking with Deputy Chief Jimmy Gladwell from the Salisbury Fire Department down, and you get to pick. We're going to put the two shorter of our members here tonight down on the bottom. Thanks, guys. We appreciate all the strong, upstanding work that you're doing. So tonight, talking about the promotional process and navigating through that process and how that works and how some of the things that we've come across. And some of the things that we found successful and the processes that we've been through. So as we get started, just as a reminder, if you could, boy, I'm really all over the place here right now. In the comments below, if you guys would put where you're from, if we get something that pops up, maybe we'll shoot you guys some comments. We're going to try and be a little bit more interactive with those moving forward. So please share with us where you're from. If you guys have gone through promotional processes, stuff like that. And then, holy cow. Wow. First off, cheers. Sorry. Cheers, everybody. That's what I'm missing. So there we go. So my name is Ben Waples, volunteer member of Salisbury, Maryland, Salisbury Fire Department. Been working with Trevor and Bobby through the Ocean City Fire Department, and then have had the opportunity to work with them on these projects for the webcasts. And then as a member of the Salisbury Fire Department, working for Jimmy when he was an assistant chief, and now that he's the deputy. So have had a lot of opportunity to work with these guys and really looking forward to our conversation tonight. So with that, I think we'll kick it on over to Trevor and go from there.
Great. Thanks, Ben. I'm Trevor Steedman. We've all been through all the backgrounds before. We were going to actually mess with some of the first-time viewers tonight and put Jim Gladwell as our screen names up here, or at least our stage names. I'll put it that way. But really happy to have Chief Gladwell on this evening. I've known Jimmy as I have the world of respect for him in the fire service, not only as a firefighter and EMS provider, but as a company level officer, a chief officer, and as a friend and a brother as well. So I'm looking forward to everything that we have to talk about tonight, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the promotional processes, and maybe even just throw some sage advice out there for people who are considering promoting or are in the process of promoting, maybe give you a few nuggets that might push you up over the edge, or people who have already been in the promotional process, and even better yet, if you're running a promotional process and you have to pick somebody and promote someone, maybe give you a few insights that might help out. So with that, glad to have everybody here this evening. Glad to see some old friendly faces. See some Mike Ryan and Nick Nosvich on there tonight, and some other folks popping in. So welcome. And with that, I'll kick it over to you, Bobby.
All right, thanks. Welcome, Jimmy. Good to have you here, Chief. Thanks, out of my 32 years, I've been on the volunteer side and also on the career side. I've been officers on both. I had the opportunity, the privilege to be the fire chief here in my hometown of Millville for a year, and had every position in between them, taught state fire captain. So I've had every position, and I think my message tonight will be that, promote to where you're comfortable. The first thing to do is to get well at your craft where you are before you promote. So get those basic tenets down as a firefighter. When you got those basic tenets down as a firefighter, it's time to be a crew leader, and it's time to think about promoting, and then put your effort and your energy into promoting. One of the things when I was younger, I never figured out about promotional processes was that, a lot of times a defense mechanism that we all give ourselves is we don't really give 100%. That way, if it doesn't work out subconsciously, we're like, well, we didn't give 100%. We're here to tell you tonight that once you make the decision to go into that promotional process, it requires you to give 100%. That's what you owe yourself. If you give 100%, you get chose, it's okay. Not a big deal. So that's one of the things I learned later on in life that I didn't really have figured out early on. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy, and let's get this thing started, buddy.
Thanks, Bobby. How you guys doing tonight? Everybody well and happy and healthy. Family's all doing well. I want to wish my heartfelt congratulations to Ben for getting ready to join the Daddy-Daughter Club. There's there's few clubs better than that one. There's few clubs better than that one. I know Trevor, he's got a boy. He doesn't have that challenge of, of trying to raise girls. So my name is Jimmy Gladwell. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in the fire service for about 29 years. 7 years as a volunteer with the Parsonsburg Volunteer Fire Company, where I started as a volunteer. Worked my way up through the ranks there as a lieutenant, like a crew leader, like Bobby talked about, and then a lieutenant, a captain, and assistant chief. Joined the ranks of the Salisbury Fire Department. Was blessed to be hired on the career side with Salisbury back in 1998, and spent 5.5 years as a firefighter CRT. Was promoted to lieutenant as a training officer, and spent about 6 or 8 months as the training officer. Then moved up to captain. I was a ladder captain on Truck 2 for about 3 or 3.5 years. And then promoted to assistant chief, where I was assistant chief for about 12 years. And now I've been the deputy chief of administration for the Salisbury Fire Department for the last just about 2 years.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. So again, we've already got a number of people tuning in. Like Trevor had mentioned, Nick Nospich, one of our former part-timers in Ocean City, currently full-time in Montgomery County. It's that time of the year for those guys. So hopefully we can provide a little advice and guidance and give them a little insight from what we've been through. Again, with taking myself out of it, the experience and the insight that we're going to have from our other 3 guests here tonight is going to be phenomenal. So sit back, relax, enjoy. One of the first things I think we want to talk about, and Bobby made mention of it, is making that decision to go and enter the promotional process. So I know for me, there was a point where I'd gotten the classes with one exception on purpose. That I needed for lieutenant. I'd been a driver, enjoyed that. It's probably one of my favorite seats on the fire engine, still to this day. But had the fire chief come and sit down with me and say, Ben, hey, look, we see what you're doing. We think you're doing a great job, and we want to kind of encourage you to move forward with the promotional process. And I knew for me that I wasn't ready for that. I didn't have the time in the department that I wanted. I didn't have the reputation that I wanted at that point. Not that my reputation's gold now, but that's always up for debate. But I know that I wasn't ready. And like what Bobby said is, we always have, or when you make that decision to do that, it has to be 100% all in. That just has to be what it is. It's your, that's the next step. And if you're going to do it, you got to do it like you're forcing a door and you're running the line into a house and there's someone in the back bedroom. It's the same thing. You have to have that intensity. You have to have that aggressiveness to get it done and to move forward with that. So let's talk about that for a little bit, and you guys' thoughts on making that decision and how you come to that decision to enter the promotional process. So Trevor?
Yeah, Ben, I know when we had our test run the other night, of course, we had hour 45 minutes worth of conversation. We could have gone on for more hours, but something Jimmy said I think was really important for a lot of people to hear. And it's about not only deciding, because eventually you're going to get to that point in your career that you're going to consider promoting. You're going to look at a promotional track, hopefully, if your department has laid one out for you. And it is frustrating for a lot of firefighters when the goalpost continues to move. That's reality, though, because when I first started in the fire service, hazmat was a big deal, or an EMS becomes a big deal, then domestic terrorism becomes a big deal. So your credentials and what you have behind you, that goalpost is going to move from time to time, and you have to adjust with it. But with that, Jimmy, you had talked about the other day when you should really truly start to consider promoting, and when the promotional process really truly does start for that individual. And just to kind of lead it off, you had said it's not when that job announcement or that promotional announcement goes up for testing. So, Jimmy, if you don't mind, could you share with the group here what you were talking with us about the other night?
Sure. Thanks, Trevor. To me, the promotional process starts really at your oral interview for during your application process. When you sit down with whatever the group is that is interviewing you to bring you into the organization, um, you know, you're going to make an impression, and that is one of your first impressions. And the old adage is that you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, and I believe that. You start that process, and then if you're blessed enough to go through there and get hired, or even get brought into as a volunteer within a fire department, your promotional process to me starts on the first day on the job. And when you walk in there, we've all said it, we've all heard it, it's all been said to us. Sit down, shut up, watch what's going on. Listen to the people around you. Watch the senior men or the senior women, whichever it might be. Network with good people. You want to ally yourself with the good ones. And it doesn't take. We all know who I'm talking about. You see the guys who are out here, the quiet guys that get the job done. They don't beat on their chest. They don't, hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. They go out and they just do. And those are the guys that you want to pay close attention to, in my opinion. And you pay close attention to the other ones too, because I can tell you that one of the best experiences of my career was working for an assistant chief that I couldn't stand. I just did not like him. And from that experience, I learned exactly what not to do when my opportunity came to sit in the same position. About how to treat people, how to talk to people, how to manage your personal life some. Bring things to work that are positive. Don't bring things to work that are negative. So, I think that you start that first day and, you start learning all about the organization and you start learning, you want to be a sponge, grab onto anyone who's willing to teach you. One thing that I have noticed in my career is that has changed a lot as well. When I came up or when I came in, everybody, you don't shut up. I'm not here to help you. I'm just here to collect my paycheck. I'm here to do my job, blah, blah, blah. And I've watched over the years how that's changed, and more people are really, truly serving as mentors to help better the organization. Because, before, if you knew something and I didn't know it, you had power, right? And really, what power did you really have? You really didn't. You knew a little bit that somebody else didn't know, so you make yourself feel good. Empowering people makes people better. It makes your shift better. It makes the department better. And so when you come in and you do sit down and shut up and you watch and you learn and you listen and you participate and, do everything that's asked of you and then some. And then when you get to a certain point, you start reaching out to your supervisor or whatever, and you start asking for more. Hey, feed me, give me an assignment, give me something to do. I want to show you that I'm capable. I came into Salisbury with 7 years under my belt, and like Ben, I had gobbled up as many classes as I could take, and was just, sometimes in 2 and 3 classes at the same time. And I walked in the door with the credentials to be a captain in the organization, based on, what Salisbury's criteria was for various officers. Now, I knew obviously that I wasn't deserving of that at all. I didn't have that thought process at all in my head, but I had those credentials. I had those classes. I had everything I needed. And so I, minus the time and grade, obviously. So, but those guys, they don't know anything about me. They knew very little about me. I was an outsider. I was from Parsonsburg. I wasn't a Salisbury guy. I grew up in Salisbury, but I didn't grow up in the Salisbury Fire Department. So they didn't really know who I was. I had to come in there and prove myself. So part of that was, just kind of shut up a little bit and just do. And the more you do, the more you get to do. If you do it well, the more you do. If you don't do it well, the less you get to do. And people start looking at other people to do things. So, start on that first day, stop, look, listen, pay attention to what's going on around you, and try to make a good impression. Chief John Toll talks about how every day is an interview, right? You come to work as a firefighter or as an EMT or as a paramedic or as, like Ben said, a driver, or whatever you are. If you're a rescue guy, truck guy, hazmat guy, whatever you might be, whatever you are that day, be the best at it that you can be. So if you're driving the rig that day, be the best MPO, the best FADO. If you're riding in the right front seat, be whatever you are, the best lieutenant, best sergeant, best captain, whatever that might be. If you're riding on the EMS unit, be the best driver, EMT, paramedic, whatever you may be the best day. Every day is an interview. And all those days combined will help set you up for that date that, like you guys talked about, like Bobby talked about. When that date comes or that promotional announcement comes, you're sitting in a good spot before you ever sit down and put the pencil in your hand to take the written exam.
Yeah, Jimmy, absolutely. And I think you hit on a couple of really important points too, is we talk about credentialing versus credibility. Right. And we try to get all those classes, and it used to be some of the promotional processes were very, let's just say, subjective. And as time evolved, as industry standards evolved, we started to put criteria in there. And a lot of our senior folks started to feel really left behind because they had a lot of experience to go on, but they didn't have a lot of the pedigree that was being required. And I know, like in our department, and Bobby was a big part of this as well, we tried to bridge a lot of that because we never want any of the more senior people with the experience to feel that their time and grade, their experience, and the blood, sweat, and tears they put into the department doesn't count. But it has to evolve, and that's kind of a bitter pill to swallow sometimes. So having not only the credentialing, which is wonderful, because then you have the opposite side of that, and I see it a lot in today's fire service, where a lot of the younger members are coming in very, very highly credentialed because they have the higher education right off the bat, they have the degrees, they have a lot of the credentialing, but they don't have the sweat equity that's been put into it to earn their bones, to be able to understand the system, the department, why you do what you do, why you do the how behind everything. So, Bobby, if you wouldn't mind talking about that just for a second, because I know from a training aspect, Bobby's one of those people that does put that sweat equity in, and he doesn't worry, and I mean this in a positive way, Bobby, so I'll preface it when I say that, but he worries less about who he's going to offend or tick off and more about who he might inspire. So, Bobby, to that end, would you talk about the training aspect, training education, and the combination thereof?
Yeah. So when you're looking at promotion, I always when I talk about officers, I talk about the inverted triangle. The EMS guys know that they talk about that for pediatrics, but I actually, who is the most important person on a fire ground at any particular time, and that is absolutely by far the guy on the nozzle, or the girl that's pulling the victim out. The person that's actually taking the Hearst tool or the Homatra tool and taking a door or whatever. They are the absolute most important person in the fire department. Next important person in the fire department is your crew leader, because you're still involved in it. You have to know when to step in and actually do the skill versus work your people through the skill or whatever. And it goes up from there. And then as you move up beyond that, then you become more and more administrative and much less of a person that's actually out on the street, actually holding the nozzle or holding the tools anymore. And that's all these positions are so important in the fire department. The fire chief is tremendously important. And when I say an inverted triangle, I say because those are the people that are actually delivering the service to the citizen. But every single person in the fire department, from the chief down, is equally important. I look at a fire department like nobody's more or less important. So when you're looking at promotions, there's two things I think you got to think about when you talk about training. I've been doing this for 32 years, and there's a whole lot of stuff I don't know. And I am positive that I will retire from this gig and not know a whole lot of stuff. That's part of the thing is when you're looking at promotion, don't get hung up in the details of things that you don't know. Just learn them as you go. As you move up into a crew leader, there's going to be things that guys underneath you are going to be able to do that you can't do, or they know something that you don't know. And you know what? That's okay. You learn from it and you move on. You have to be able to swallow the pill a little bit, that just because you promote doesn't mean you know more than everybody that's below you anymore. I think that's part of the key to the training. The second thing is you need to always be a student of the game. So just because you become the crew leader and you're not holding the nozzle anymore, it doesn't mean you don't train on the nozzle anymore. It doesn't mean that you don't keep honing your skills at that particular level anymore, because you know what? It keeps you relevant with the people below you. If you move up to a captain and you move up to an assistant chief and you never ever interact with your people anymore, and you never ever go out and train with them anymore, you become distant from them. It's just kind of how the fire departments work. And you have lots of things to do, so you can't spend as much time doing those kinds of things. But I think the two big take-home points I can give you from the training perspective is you're never going to know it all, and you have to catch up as an officer. One of the jobs of being an officer is catching up on the stuff you didn't learn that you should have learned before you became that level of officer. And the second point is you've never been a lieutenant, or you've never been a captain, or you've never been an assistant chief, or whatever that level is that you're going to. So when you start out, you've never been one. So don't pretend that you already were one for a long time. Walk in there humble, do what you have to do, learn what you have to learn, and lean on what you knew from the been before. I think those are my two biggest take-home points about when you're looking at promotional is you're never going to know it all. You got to continue to be a student of this game for the whole time you're here. And the last thing is when you move up, it's okay not to know specifically what you're going into because you've never done it before. And you're going to have a learning curve, and you're going to have some difficult times, and you're going to make mistakes. And all of those things are okay. So once you're ready to go and promote, just know from us that it doesn't mean that once they give you that magical helmet with that magical shield, that it's like Superman and all of a sudden you've got all the answers and you can solve everything. So, we lost Jimmy, the most important guy here. There he goes. He's back.
He's back.
I'm back.
Internet. So like 2 or 3 years
Comcast
ago,
at its best.
well, you guys only got like indoor plumbing like probably 10 years ago, right?
Right.
So the internet's something.
This isn't Sussex County, Bobby.
I was going to say that was 5 years quicker than
So
Delaware.
Trevor, yeah, well, that's true. So Trevor, that's my thoughts on it. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for, Bobby. And this dovetails into something else as well that Jimmy mentioned the other day when we were doing the test run for this. And Jimmy, I'm going to ask you to address this next thing that I'm going to throw at you as candidate Gladwell and also evaluator Gladwell. So on both sides of the promotional table. And you'd already mentioned there's some things, and Bobby mentioned this too. You'll never know all the inner workings of the department and what they have in mind when they're going through the promotional process. And yes, they can put the list of criteria, the credentialing, time and grade, all the criteria. But I'll give you a classic example. If you're in a mid-sized to a large-sized department and they're trying to do some succession planning, they be in the administration, they might look and say, wow, I'm going to lose 20, 25, 30% of my paramedic firefighters or firefighter paramedics in the next 5 years. So you might be probably the best candidate, and someone who might not be quite as good as you, but has that paramedic card,
right,
might jump in ahead of you just because that's the need of the department. They may or may not tell you that, but you can't get butthurt. You can't go, all of a sudden catch the worst attitude in the world, because they want to see sometimes just as well how you take success and not failure, but disappointment.
Right.
And if you become the biggest hater in the department, as soon as you don't get your way and take your ball and go home, they kind of go, wow, maybe it was a good thing we didn't promote that guy.
Right.
I had a gentleman that used to work with me in the department I'm in now. He had applied. He was one of my volunteer members. Great guy. Had a he's having a very bright future. And he had applied to a department that was hiring several people just to the south. He was a firefighter EMT, currently in paramedic school. Guy was just most squared away individual. If I could have hired him on as one of my full-time people, if I had a vacancy, I would have put him right in. I just didn't have one at the time, and we didn't have as much to offer as this other department. Long story short, I knew from the chief of that department that they needed to hire firefighter paramedics. They had a big shortage right then. He wasn't a paramedic yet, so he didn't get hired the first go-round. He was kind of devastated, but he had a good attitude about it. And he did the right thing. He shook their hand. He didn't kiss their ass, but he just said, hey, look, I wasn't picked this round, but this is where I want to work. So what can I do to improve myself? Right. The answer was nothing. you unless he could perfect time travel, there was nothing he could do to improve himself that we could give him, or we could say. But 6 months later, when they reopened it up again, he was the first round draft pick because he was right there in line. So again, you'll never know the administrative stuff, what HR is looking for, if there's certain quotas, any kind of quotas they're trying to meet as far as people in certain age ranges or demographics. You just don't know. And so if you don't make it that first time, don't get discouraged. So Jimmy, if you would talk about a couple things. You had mentioned about researching the department and looking at understanding the exact job that needs to be done, not the image of the job that you have. But can you talk about that from when you were a candidate to, let's say, step up to a lieutenant's position, and now as an evaluator, what are some things that you look for that resonate with you on both ends of the spectrum?
Well, candidate wise, you certainly want to prepare yourself. You come to work and, like I said, come to work and do the job every day. And that in and of itself, I think that's half the battle. One thing about promotional opportunities and processes is that, we don't open up a promotional opportunity today and say the interviews and the testing is tomorrow. Generally speaking, you've got time between the time of the announcement and the actual beginning of the written exam process, with the process where the written exam. So, you have a lot of time most of the time, you have a lot of time to sit down, study your SOPs, learn, whatever it is that you think is going to come at you. I mean, most people know somebody that went through a promotional process, and you can sit down with that individual and chit chat with them. And it's not like, I'm not going, hey, what was on the test? It's not that at all. It's like, where, you have to have some kind of understanding that, people are the things you deal with every day. Are you going to you're going to get asked questions about human resources. You're going to get asked some kind of a tactical question. You're probably going to get something really off the wall thrown at you because the evaluators want to see how you manage yourself under pressure. There's lots of things that you ought to know, and you should already know your SOPs. So when you sit down and take your written exam, there shouldn't be really anything on there that surprises you. You should be prepared for that. Then you get to, if you're successful in the written exam, you're going to go on to the oral examination board, and you really shouldn't be surprised for that either. When you walk into the board, be prepared, walk in there, look sharp, come in there with your Class A on and look the part, walk in there like you own the joint and you want this position. Show me. When I'm an evaluator, I'll talk it, out both sides of my mouth at the same time. As an evaluator, I want to watch a guy walk in the door with his chest out, his chin up, and I want him to bring me a resume. I want him to shake my hand. I want him to wait to sit down until he's either asked permission to or he's told to sit down. I want a guy or gal that's coming in there and it's like you talk about, the term you use all the time is squared away. And then, be prepared. If you want to be a fire line officer, or if you're promoting from from junior officer up to chief officer or something like that, there shouldn't be anything that the evaluation board throws at you that should surprise you. You ought to be, I don't know, you should have your act together. You got to be able to think fast on your feet. That's what we do. I mean, even as a firefighter, that's what we do. So, coming into the promotional side of it, that really shouldn't catch you off guard. Now, maybe it's a question that, okay, that one's got a lot to it, but you got pencil and paper in front of you. Use it. We tell you, hey, you got 5 minutes to answer this question, or 15 minutes, or whatever it is. Use the time wisely. Jot down things as we go. And I'll tell you something else. As a candidate, if you have a question, ask it. Don't sit there and give us a ridiculous answer because you misunderstood the question, or give us an answer that I don't want you to give me the answer I want to hear. I want you to give me the answer that you think is the correct answer. And, don't misunderstand or misinterpret the question. By all means, ask questions. Nobody is going to look down on you or take points away from you because you took a second to take the initiative to make sure that you understood the question completely so that you can answer it thoroughly. As an evaluator, you sit and you watch people come in the door, and some guys and gals, they really are ready. You can tell they have prepared. They have got their poop together to get it on with you. They're regularly spending time. Hello, doggy. They're regularly spending time with their nose in the SOP book or in some kind of fire, like the fire officer book or whatever it might be. And they came in there ready to roll. We look at how people manage their stress. When you get that 14 different factor question thrown at you, how you manage the stress of that is as important as how you answer it. Because, there are probably a myriad of answers to especially a tactical question. We expect you to know that the first engine's going to do this and the first truck's going to do this and the second engine's going to do that and the second truck's going to do this. And, we're looking for, when you miss the obvious stuff, like not laying in, not throwing ladders if you're a truck company guy or whatever it might be, misunderstanding, or not throwing out a 360, whatever it might be. When you miss those things, those are easy points. Don't leave those points on the paper. We have an expectation that you're going to grab all those easy points. There are hard points out there that, you kind of get extra credit for, so to speak, when you answer them and answer them well. But a lot of it is how you manage yourself, how you manage the stress. There's a lot of different ways of thinking about and acting upon managing a tactical question or a human resources question. We want to see how personable you're going to be. Do you really understand the mission? Are you into the mission? And if we ask you what the mission is, we have an understanding, or we have a hope, that you have an understanding of what that mission is. So there's a whole myriad of things. And like you talk about, you sit there and we also understand too, that you have a good day and you have a bad day. And you may have had a whole lot of good days before you walked into that. And the day before was you're 24 and you got run ragged and you walk in the door and maybe you don't perform up to the level that we're used to seeing you perform. We take that into consideration too. Hey, I know Ben, and he just had his 15 minutes in this interview wasn't his best. Now we want to see your best out of you, obviously, but we also have an understanding that every single one of us has a bad day. Everyone's human, and we get it. We're human. We make mistakes. We certainly want to see you perform at the highest level you have the capability of performing at. But there's the human factor is taken in as well. So it's a whole lot of things that go into the promotional process. And like you said, Trevor, some days you're looking for a specific type of person to fill a specific void. And you look at somebody that maybe they didn't perform, because most of these guys are like this. When they get in there, there's not usually this. They're usually all in this area. And when they're all in that area, it makes it really difficult sometimes to make a solid choice. So you sit and you think about, who might be the best fit for the position that you have available. Is it the training officer's position? Is it the EMS officer's position? In that aspect, you're probably going to be looking for a paramedic as opposed to an EMT. Lots of things go into it. And, you as the candidate may never have all the insight. You go in there and you think, man, I thought I nailed it. And you may have nailed it. But at that point in time in history, we needed somebody with just a different skill set. And, when you walk away from the table, like you talked about, Trevor, if you have an attitude, we're going to remember that. That's not going to go well. It's not going to sit well at the next table. When you sit down at the next promotional opportunity, and that promotional board maybe has one person on it that was from the last promotional board, or like I said, the fire chief says every day is an interview. We're watching you, and you don't hold your attitude high where it was before. We understand you're disappointed. We get that. We allow for that. But continued negativity is going to bring down the people around you, and you weren't set up to be a good leader in the first place if that's the way you're going to respond.
Jimmy, I would agree with you on that. And I'm looking at a question that came from one of our brothers. It says, best ways to consider upselling yourself when the panel knows you, your history, your track record. They found it hard to sell themselves when the panel knows the candidate, especially in a relatively small department. We've all been there. And Jimmy, from your promotional processes, sometimes we go in and hope it's going to be as objective as possible, but there is some subjectivity in there. One of the things, and Jimmy, I want you, if you don't mind, share the story that you had told us the other day from when you went into your first candidate interview. But to me, this goes back to your very first point: is you have to
Right.
become that go-to person on your ship. And again, that's not buying stock in chapstick because you're going to be chapping your ass or chapping your lips on the wrong ass every day, trying to figure out what's going on. But be that go-to person, regardless of your title. You're the one who trains. You're the one who studies. You're the one who gets up out of the recliner and tries to figure out how to be better at their job and make the department better that day. That's what's going to carry you. Because let's be honest about it, as an officer and as a supervisor, and this is one of the most difficult things when you're trying to do an evaluation on somebody, an actual performance evaluation, you don't see them 24/7. And I'll give you an example. If you guys were talking about a motor vehicle collision from last night, once those double doors close on the back of that ambulance, do you see what that paramedic does, how their level of patient care? Do you see how they interface with the patient or the family? Do you see how they interface with the hospital staff or the physician? You don't have the first idea unless they're riding with an FTO or another officer, and you get secondary feedback really of how that person does. So you could have done a bang up job as that provider on the fire scene or on that medical scene. And if no one saw it, you're like, well, damn, I'm not going to go around tooting my own horn. But at the same time, how do I get recognized for my worth and value to the department? Well, you've got to earn that every single day.
Right.
In my opinion, where you go in and you become that go-to person on the fire scene, and you're not trying to overstep or circumvent your captains, your lieutenants, or anybody else, but you might have that particular skill set. Or Jimmy, you had mentioned it the other day about, sometimes it's taking that little bit of a, excuse the crude expression, but a little bit of a bite out of a shit sandwich and maybe doing the not glorious job around the fire station or the most glorious responsibility, but you take it on, you do it well, and that builds your credibility, that builds your stock and puts some chips. But could you talk about that a little bit and how you see that, and kind of answer the question that Freddie's asking at the bottom of the page a bit more clear than I did?
Yeah. Hey, Freddie, I see you on there. The same chief that I spoke about earlier that I just, didn't really care to work with. We had a very good crew. We had an excellent shift, and he never appreciated that. And that was always frustrating. We had a bunch of young guys that were all strong, all good at something. Everybody kind of, what's the right word? Pushed everybody. It worked well. And, there was a lot of things that the chief, I don't know, he didn't like doing. And one of those things was like report writing. Well, report writing doesn't bother me. I don't have an issue with that. I've never had an issue with doing it. And, this guy would come back and I'd say, hey, chief, can I help you with, the report or whatever it is, because, maybe he had 3 or 4 and we were backed up on calls or something like that. Can I help you? Can I pick one up for you or whatever? And, back in that day, we were handwriting reports, not just, we weren't just putting them in computers and things like that. So, there was a lot of checks to be checked, boxes to be filled, some paragraphs to be written and things like that. And, the guys would sometimes ask me because they knew I didn't particularly care for the guy, and they knew I didn't kiss his ass because he and I often had some exchanges. But it was like, why are you doing this for him? And I would tell him, like, look, this guy's not going to be here forever. This isn't about him. This is about me. It was too, because I wanted to try to help the chief. That's part of your job. Part of your job as a firefighter is make your officer look good. And if you do that, that kind of gets back to what Freddie was asking. If you push, find out what the officer's agenda is, find out, learn the things that set him off, learn the things that make him happy, and try to manage that without, everybody thinking that you're blowing him. Forgive me. You go in there and do the job and do it well. And what happened is, like I said earlier, reach out and say, look, I want to take on some more responsibility. And I think one of the things to help answer Freddie's question is that, you have to tell people that you want to be promoted. You have to make it obvious. And that doesn't mean, again, that you go around and say, look at me, I want to be promoted, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to take your job, Trevor, or your job, Bobby, or whatever. That's not it at all. It's the simple fact that you have career aspirations. We all have goals. And one of my goals was to be promoted, and understanding that, learning how to do those reports helped me. It helped the chief. It helped him get his paperwork done. It took a little stress off him. Something else that did, if that took stress off him, what do you suppose that did to the crew? That helped take some stress off of them as well, because this guy is more relaxed. He's a healthier, happier individual. It's creating a better working atmosphere, not just for him, but for the remainder of the guys on the crew. And, again, they would ask me, why are you doing this for him? Because, we know you don't particularly care for him. And I'm like, this ain't about him. This is about trying to help out the shift as a whole. But then it's about me as well, because it gave me experience. It gave me opportunity. And, somebody could sit back here watching this program and say, well, he's a backstabbing SOB. And that isn't it at all. At some point in time, this guy was, 35 years on the job or whatever. At some point in time, these guys are going to retire. And if you get these opportunities, again, this doesn't happen so much today, because our officers today, at least in my department, are spending time mentoring people and trying to help them advance their career. 25 years ago, or 20 years ago, I guess it was, that wasn't the case. Most of the officers weren't trying to help you advance anything. They were just trying to get from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. And, that makes for, how do you sell yourself? How do you promote? Back in those days, you had to be in the fire department. In our fire department, you had to be in your 11th year before you were eligible to be promoted. Because of the standards that we had, you had to be a probationary member for a year. And then you tested for what we called firefighter 1 and you got that for 3 years. And then you tested for firefighter 2, and you were in that for 3 years. And then you tested for firefighter 3, and you were in that for 3 years. So all of a sudden, you're in your 11th year before you're eligible to be promoted to lieutenant. So if you were like me, I walked in on the career job, at 31 years old. Add 11 years to that, you know what? You're starting to get to a point where, hell, you ought to be getting yourself in a chief's buggy by that time, and not necessarily just making the right front seat of the fire engine, because where are you going to go from there? So, we talked about you talked about the story with my first promotional process. I walked in the door. I got, I don't know, some high 90s on my written exam. I was, lucky with that. And then got my date for my interview. And I walked in, I had my medals on my chest. I had my Class A on. I was looking as sharp as I can look, which isn't very sharp, obviously, but doing the best I can on what there is to work with. And I walked in the door thinking, I feel good about myself. First thing I walked into the door, I see a chief, or an officer, I think he was a chief at the time, that I thought for sure just did not like me. He just did not care for me. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. We had never really had words, but we just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and we had never had a whole lot of interactions. And I just assumed that this guy just didn't care for me. The next person I see is Trevor Stedman, because as the door opened up, I got to see the full view of the individuals. When I saw Trevor, my whole demeanor changed.
We're really glad you didn't say the full Monty.
I started to, Ben. I thought better of it.
That was a different interview.
Was. Then I opened up the door and I saw another gentleman, Bob Klum, who had been invited to be part of the interview process, and another guy who, this guy's like a father to me, and I just had this immense amount of respect. So, the first thing I do when I walk in the door, I see this individual, and I have this, oh my God, I'm screwed. I'm done. And then all of a sudden, as the door continues to open, I see, these rays of hope, and my whole demeanor changed. My whole attitude changed. And Trevor, you would have to be the person to, verify that this is true or not. But, I felt like I killed that interview. I felt like I just I felt like when I walked out the door,
I think you did okay.
when I walked out the door, I just felt that I had it. I had given it everything I had, and I left everything I had sitting in there on the field, so to speak. But from that point on, it was out of my hands. So that's a whole nother conversation that we had a little bit the other day about too. Is doing what you can do and all you can do, and just having a positive attitude about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that we had talked about the other day, I have the fortune or misfortune, however you want to look at it. I have a very young workforce, and we're a combination department. I have a lot of volunteers, but we have a rotating door of volunteers, mainly because there's so many job opportunities in this region. And I lose a lot of really good volunteer members, but I'm losing them to success. I'm losing them to careers in other departments where I don't have the ability to offer that to them at that kind of rate. So the best thing I can do is, like Jimmy's talking about, is try to mentor them. I do a lot of mock interviews with them, and when they come in to say, "Hey, Chief, I'm applying to county fire rescue in this county or this municipality or what have you," it's like, "Wow, I'm sorry to lose you. Congratulations. When's your interview?" And I'll start throwing the questions at them. And this might be helpful too. And I want to see from your guys' perspective if you think this is because this is just how I'm looking at it through my eyes as an evaluator. But I'll say, where are you interviewing? And they'll say, XYZ municipality. Who's on your interview board? I don't know. Well, such and such just left the department 6 months ago. And I think you had brought this up, Jimmy or Ben. Call them and talk to them. They've been through it recently. But find out how many people are going to be in. You don't want to go in looking like a smacked ass and have
Right.
three resumes and you have 5 people on the board.
Right.
Find out a little bit about them. In this digital age, go on that department's website and start looking. Go on your own department's website and see what is your go-to thing. Some people are huge, or some departments are big into community risk reduction. There's one department in north end of the county there, pre-COVID, their bicycle helmet giveaway was their big thing every year, and they took a lot of pride in it. Other places, they do Pulse Point, community CPR. They do all these different wonderful initiatives within their communities. So what you're looking at is being that you might want to be the engine boss or the truck boss, and that's great. That's a wonderful thing. But the people evaluating you want to know if you understand the big picture mission of the department. Yeah, you're going to be that boss on that rig, and that's vitally important. Know your job well. But what is it? What's the overall thing that department's trying to push? The other thing is when they come in, what's their platform skills? I mean, we spend so much time doing this,
Right.
talking to each other. How long do you look them in the eye? How long do you shake their hand? And I'm not trying to make it so regimented. You have to go in and be natural with these people. But there's some people, they won't even look the interviewers in the eye long enough to figure out what eye color they have. Or they'll go and they'll hand them the dead fish, or they'll do the death squeeze on their hand. But figure that out ahead of time. And here's one of the pieces of advice I give them. I'll throw them to the wolves right away, and I'll say, okay, Bob Jones, tell me about yourself. I was born at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I was 6 pounds 3 ounces, and I like applesauce. And people, stop, please stop. And this is the point where it's perfectly okay and acceptable. And you value your evaluators' time. Understand that they have to get through a lot of candidates, but what's going to set you apart at the end of that interview? And that's like, Jimmy, I can tell you, remembering all those years ago, you came in, and as a lieutenant candidate, you had a command presence. And I'm going to get you to talk about command presence in just a minute. But you established a presence. You presented yourself very honorably to everybody there. You didn't come in as a kiss ass, or I know I'm dating myself by saying this, Eddie Haskell. You'll have to look that one up if you don't know who I'm talking about. But you're going in, you're presenting yourself, but also know your role, know your job, know the position, but research that department some and go through and have those platform skills that are in there. Be able to articulate. Getting back to my point is that if they give you a broad brush like that, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where do you start? Don't be the deer in the headlights. It is perfectly acceptable to, and I'm not saying take control of the interview, but steer it. And you do have some bit of control. Say, well, sir, ma'am, would you like to hear something personal or professional? Well, if they say either, you can talk about whatever you want, but you've narrowed that field, and you're not just sitting there being a bumbling idiot and coming out of the interview going, "Oh my God, I can't believe that under training I told him I had, my first thing was potty at year 3." You want to make sure that you narrow the field down a little bit. Or if they say, well, tell me something professional. So, well, I started my fire service career as a volunteer in Salisbury, Maryland. I ascended to this position. I transferred across the floor when there was a job opportunity, so forth and so on. So you can narrow it down and you look at those selling points. The other thing I tell people is, and this might be a little bit old school, but even in the digital age, it's okay to send an email. After the interview, of course, you're going to thank people. You can certainly ask them, well, would you have any reservation hiring me? Sometimes that rocks them back a little bit. Or would you have any reservation promoting me? Or is there anything that I didn't answer that you'd like to hear more about? Holy shit. That's kind of it's a forward move, but it's not an arrogant move.
Right.
Last but not least, send a thank you note, either a handwritten letter or an email within 24 hours. Believe it or not, that can set you apart sometimes. You might be neck and neck with somebody, and the only difference is that they categorized you alphabetically because you came in on the same day. You might got hired the exact same day and don't have any more time in grades. And the only reason your name shows up below someone else's is because you're further down in the alphabet. But that one little thing of showing just that little bit of class and distinction and how you handle yourself, or even after the interview, if you don't get it, that go round, so come back to them and say, thank you for the opportunity. What can I do better? Not, where did I go wrong? Because then you start sounding like the needy boyfriend or girlfriend. Are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong? No, come on. Let's be legitimate about this. What can I improve? Let me know. And to me, those are some things when people look at areas they can improve. Sometimes you get some answers that are a little more clear to you. You'll either get an answer of where you actually can improve, or some things that they can tell you, well, here's what could make you a more marketable candidate. Or they can just say, it wasn't your time because we needed someone with a training background, because as soon as Bob Smith retires, we got to bump such and such over to training, and then we have to fill that person's position over here. You don't know how the chess pieces need to be moved in the department typically. You can think you do, but you don't. And that's not because you're a bad or stupid person. It's just there's a lot of crap and data points that are floating around at the administrative level all the time, and it's a moving target. So it's very hard to conceptualize, let alone hit.
So before anybody else goes on, I'm going to hijack our webcast here. We're coming up on our hour, which we usually try and keep it to that. So because I think we've got a lot of really great information and that we've shared so far, I think I'd like to allow a little extra time for our final thoughts and that kind of stuff, just because there is so much good stuff to share. And it's not just promotional stuff. It's also stuff that if you're looking to get a job and get hired on somewhere, that the stuff that we're talking about as far as getting promoted, like we talked about in the very beginning, this is all stuff that can help you get the job as well. Like Trevor had talked about, finding out what the department needs and knowing about the department in order to get, that first interview and do well with that. Like Jimmy had talked about, your interview and your reputation starts from your interview when you first get hired to get brought into the organization as a volunteer. So it's all very important stuff, and this all transcends, just the promotional process. It goes across to just joining a department. So let me kick it down to Bobby. And see what Bobby's thoughts are to kind of start wrapping this up. And like I said, I wanted to give us a little extra time. So if there was more that we wanted to do, we have that time. So go ahead, Bobby.
Okay, thanks, Ben. First of all, thank you, Chief Gladwell, for coming on. This is great to have you here. It's been a long time since we talked,
Yes,
actually. So it's kind
glad
of
to see you.
So about 26 years ago, a little bit longer than that, I got my first career promotion. And I remember my very first officers meeting like it was yesterday. And you're not going to believe the issues that we talked about. We talked about that the guys weren't always motivated to check their equipment. We talked about that guy sat in the recliner too much. We talked about, lots of things that we thought were shortcomings of the people that work for us. In 26 years, every single management meeting I've been to has had that resounding and constant theme. So one thing I want you all to take home, and I'm going to give my tricks on the promotional process here in just a second, but one thing you want to take home is there is no problem that we will ever encounter that can be solved by anything but work. There is nothing that we can ever encounter that cannot be solved by hard work. I watched a convention speech from Bill Gates a few years ago, and I'll never forget it. He said, "I'm asked often, what does success feel like?" He's a billionaire or a trillionaire, whatever he is, and he says, "I get people ask me every day, what does success feel like?" And he says, I had to think about what I would answer people, and his answer was, "Success feels a whole lot like hard work." And that's all these problems that we talk about as managers and things when we get to these positions and stuff. Hard work, the difficult conversations, the awkward conversations, all those things. If we don't do it, things aren't going to get better. The trick I tell everybody about the process of promoting is, one thing is studying. Whatever material that you're supposed to be written, tested on, if you don't study it, then other people are going to beat you. It's just kind of the way it works, As far as going into the interview, a lot of the guys have already covered this already tonight. What I tell everybody that goes into an interview is never, ever, ever go into an interview thinking that it makes your outcome different. Your interview is about you presenting yourself to a group of people. And Freddie asked a great question. What if you know people? Well, it's fine. You're going to go in there and you're going to, my goal in an interview is they may not promote me, but I want them to sit at home and say, man, I wish I could have promoted that guy. If you go in with that attitude and don't worry about the outcome, because to be honest with you, Trevor talks about a circle of influence. Hopefully he talks about that a little bit. You have no control over who they choose ever. You just go in there and do well. And when Jimmy talked about walking in there confidently, it is, if you don't know the answer to what's the weakest thing about you, and you don't know the answer to what's the strongest thing about you, you never deserve to be promoted. You never deserve to be promoted. Have your wife ask you the questions. They're the most critical people in your life. At least mine is. Okay. Have them ask you the questions, and sometimes they go, "That's the dumbest answer I've ever heard." And you get mad, you fight with them and stuff. But then when you go in the room, you've already been asked that question. Have people, friends, ask you questions. If it's going to be a difficult thing, you're not used to talking in front of people. Right. Practice talking in front of people. You're not going to figure it out when you walk into the promotional room. So go in there, give them everything that you have. Make sure have a good idea of what you think they're going to ask you. And the biggest thing, I think Jimmy said it about the writing the note paper down. When someone asks you a question, take that moment to think about it before you open your mouth. Just take that second to say, and it's even better to kind of repeat the question. Just say, "Hey, okay, so you're asking me what my weakest thing is." And then think about it for a second, because if you miss the question, if you didn't hear it quite right because you're nervous and you don't send it back, just like you're talking on the fire ground, you repeat back what the chief told you to do. Same exact thing. If you're not right, they'll go, whoa, no, that's not what we asked you, before you get embarrassed in the middle of your interview. So that's my whole thing is practice, and go in there and know that you aren't affecting the outcome. You're only affecting how you present yourself to a group of people about what you want to do and where you want to go.
Thanks, Bobby. Those are some great points, and I think we've been getting a lot of comments from folks watching, and they've agreed and they've made the same thing or said the same thing. So, Chief Gladwell, let's get some of your final thoughts, and then we'll kick it up to Trevor, and
all right,
we'll
great.
close
Thanks,
it out.
Ben. Bobby, I couldn't agree with you more. I've told these guys, I haven't seen you in a while, and I've told these guys about when we were talking the other night about how much respect I have for you and how, between you and Trevor, you guys have been mentors to me. I've tried to emulate each of you, and through the good and the bad, or whatever you might say, It's great to have mentors. It's great to have people like you guys that get it, and that that you're when you came into fire service was at a particular level, and when you guys finally decide to leave, I mean, all of us except Ben are getting in the twilights of our career. um the key is that we want to leave it better for the next group. So um and I think, I think that we're doing that, and one of the things I think this particular podcast does, it does that. It sets it up. I've watched all of them so far. I think I've missed one. I'm sorry. And every one of them has been informative. I know I got to catch up. I'm sorry, Trevor. Every one of them has been informative.
Rob's?
Huh?
Brampton's?
Yes, I believe it or not, I didn't see him. But as far as promotions go, I think one of the keys to promotions is actually, I think the key to promotions is to look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you want to promote? Do you really want to promote? Because being promoted this will sound arrogant, and it is not. I swear to you, it's not intended to. Being promoted is easy. And somebody will sit back and say, well, he's full of crap. It's not so easy. Of the promotional cycles, once you getting promoted, getting that first one is a little more difficult because the cadre of characters, the number of characters is usually greater. As you promote up, the pool gets a little smaller, the competition level gets a little smaller, as far as the numbers go. But getting promoted, it's really not all that difficult. If you can get your foot in the door, you get in there and you do the things that you know how to do. You are prepared. You prepare yourself properly. Get a good night's sleep before the promotional process, before the written test, before the oral exam. That coming from a guy who never sleeps. But eat a good meal. Don't go out on the town and get drunk. Check your medals the night before. When you walk in, make sure your medals are in the right places. Based on your SOPs, how they're supposed to be worn, all that kind of stuff. Once you get in there, getting there is the one part of the battle. The hardest part is being promoted, is what you do after you get promoted. Because now all of a sudden, really the true hard work starts. You got the boss thing you have to manage. You've got, the expectations of the promotional board. They want to send a name to the fire chief for his consideration. Their name is tagged to that individual. As a group, they're tagged to that individual. The fire chief's name is now tagged to Ben Waples or Trevor Stedman or Bobby McGee. And if he or she promotes somebody and that person does not do well, now all of a sudden they feel foolish. They don't like, that turned out poorly. They want to choose good people. They want to set up for secession. That's another part of it you don't get to see. Trevor talked about how you don't know the inner workings of why people are getting promoted, and sometimes fire chiefs and deputy chiefs sit there and look about. Okay, Trevor really hit on about the retirements that are coming up, and who's going to be the best fit on a particular, to replace a certain guy or gal. So if you can, once you get in there, the hard work really starts then. And if you aren't willing to step up and be a boss when necessary, none of us want to discipline anyone. We didn't go to work, the next shift thinking that, I'm out for somebody. I'm looking for whomever I can to write up. That's not what we do. That's the last thing any of us want to do. And it's the last thing generally we ever do. We coach before we counsel most of the time. And, the whole idea is to set people up for success. If I set you up for success, the department's going to be successful. If the department is successful, that looks great in the stakeholders' eyes. That helps you out at budget time. That helps the community. If you're a volunteer organization, that helps the community want to open up their checkbooks. They see what you're doing and they understand that you are a huge part of the community, whether you're a career volunteer or both, it doesn't matter. But that's when the hard work starts after you get promoted, and you have to be willing to step in when there's conflict. You have to be willing to counsel. You have to be willing to mentor. You have to be willing to share information and not be power hungry. You have to find, part of your job is finding the next guy or gal who's going to take your spot. That's a big part of your job is to set up. If I promote or I retire, I want people that I have mentored to get promoted, right? The more that get promoted that have been mentored by me, that's my legacy. It's not about my name. It's not about how many years I put in the fire department. It's about, in 15 years, who is where, and did they work for me? Did I have positive influence on them? That type of thing. Because look, in a couple of generations, nobody's going to remember the name Gladwell. Nobody's going to remember the 2 or 3 generations from now, they'll forget all about who we were as people. But those people that you got promoted who mentored under you, they take that same process, they mentor, it moves on up, and you pay it forward. And if you're not willing to do all that, if you're not willing to put in the work to make sure that your crew is the best trained crew out there. You don't have to be the best crew in the fire department. You have to be the best crew that you have the ability to be. And if you train hard, like Bobby talked about, and you continue all those mentoring processes, your crew is going to perform. And the fire chief, the deputy chiefs, whoever, the assistant chiefs, they're going to look at that stuff. And, you kind of, I don't want to say, you don't really necessarily make their job obsolete, but you make their job easy. And they appreciate that. So, if you're willing to step up and do those types of things, then by all means get into the process. But I would also say, if you're going to do it, go after it, go after it 100%. I have never been in competition with anybody in a promotional process. The only person I have to compete with is me. Bobby said it, Trevor said it, Ben has said it. You have absolutely no control beyond your interview. You go in there, you manage yourself well, you manage the questions. Like Trevor said, you don't necessarily take the lead, but you kind of guide it. That is a command presence. Trevor, you talked about a command presence. People look at that and they're looking for a command presence. When you walk in there, they don't want to see a sheep. They want to see a wolf. So, be a wolf, go in there and have that command presence, but don't worry about who else is in the process. Why? You can't do anything about what they do or how they present themselves, what information they share in that interview. You can't, you have no idea what their written score was on their test, unless everybody's chirping, firefighters will do that a lot. But the only thing you can control is what you do and how you manage yourself. And if you go in there and get rid of this concept of competing against, 20 guys, or if you're an FDNY, maybe 500 guys for a spot or 1,000 guys for a spot, you're already, killing yourself. You just go in there prepared and be the very best that you can be. And then, like you said, Bobby, I want to walk away from that interview. And when I walk out the door, I want the 3 or the 5 or however many is on the promotional board to look at each other and say, that dude needs to be promoted. We got to find a spot for him somewhere or her somewhere. And if you can walk out and leave them with the mic drop thing, I think you have done all you can do. And beyond that, it gets back to what Trevor talks about with maybe the necessities of the department itself. But just go in there and forget about whoever else is in the process and manage your business, and don't worry about anybody else's. Thanks.
Thanks, Jimmy. Trevor?
All right, just a couple last bullet points. And Jimmy, thank you so much. And something that you said reminded me of an old proverb, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase a little bit, but he said, one of the greatest ways to grow a society is that the old men plant trees that they know they'll never sit underneath that shade. And, exactly
Right.
what you said is, and sometimes, and we've all seen the peaks and valleys in our departments, we've seen it grow, we've seen it decline, we've seen it climb again. We've seen good leadership, and we've seen leadership where, if God forbid something happened to us, they would post our job announcement before they post our obituary. And that's just, the sad fact of, sometimes where the politics go. But one of the things I'll say is you never, ever, I'll put it on First off, never ever mute yourself. That's for the one thing. The other thing is never let an absence of leadership be your excuse not to do your job. We all get frustrated sometimes with how things go, in the chronology of people above us, but we can't use that as an excuse to say, I'm not going to do my job today. You do your job each and every day. Ask questions about the job, about the position. Jimmy said something very profound earlier. There's people who want power and there's people who will empower. Figure out who they are in your command structure and look at the people who are the shitbags and say, you know what? They're a shitbag. I got to work with them. Keep the mission clear in front of you, but at the same time, learn what not to do from them. Learn from them as well. Don't be afraid to fail. That's another thing. Either you're going to succeed or you're going to learn, but don't be afraid to fail. And as a new officer, don't be afraid to fail in front of your people. They know you're new, but now all eyes are on you. You're in the fishbowl. You are going to screw something up. It's going to happen, but talk to them. Just be real. Again, I think you guys already talked. There's no magical dust they sprinkle on your helmet or on your front piece when you get promoted that gives you this knowledge base. So you got to rely on the people that you work with. They don't work for you; they work with you, and that's one of the biggest things I think that you'll need to remember. The other thing that we have to look at is something I go back to is about asking the questions. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. So go to some of those people and ask about the department. Hey, and I'm not talking about the vision and the mission statement and all that kind of stuff, but ask some of these people who are in these positions, hey, where are we trying to go as a department, or what? Some of them might answer you, some of them might dismiss you, some of them might actually sit down and have the conversation with you, but that gives you a better insight as to if you have an interest in going into the training division. Hey, what are we looking for? What's our 3, 5, and 7 year plan? You might get a captain, battalion chief, whomever, who gets really butthurt because they don't have a 3, 5, 7 year plan. But those are some things you might start to look at and say, okay, where does the department go? Have that opportunity to talk with a chief officer and say, hey, from your perspective, what advice would you give? I mean, I asked that question earlier on, and I was told to work hard, pay attention, and pray to God that my first command was a top floor fire. Fortunately, it was, and it works out. But the other thing is too, for the interviews, don't be afraid of an awkward silence. A lot of interviewees at all levels, and as Jim, you had mentioned this, as you start to ascend up, it becomes less SOP, policy, HR question based, and more of, okay, what makes this guy tick or guy or gal? Don't be afraid of silence. A lot of people have verbal diarrhea and they have to fill that void. And when you're done talking, shut up. Will you have that potential evaluator who's going to go, is that all? Is there anything else? Okay, you may. And you could say, no. Or, yes, there's something I'd like to add. But don't be afraid of silence. It's okay. Don't be afraid, like Chief Gladwell's saying, is to take a moment, ask them. When you come in, sometimes they give you a pad of paper and a pen. Other times you can ask them, is it okay if I take notes? And if they give you a scenario, write it down. That way you don't skip anything. And ask them to repeat things. You're going to do it on the fire ground. You're going to do it if you give medication. Why wouldn't you do it in an interview? Take notes. Yes, you might have to leave those notes there when you go. That's okay. But all those little things, I think, really come together and make you a better candidate and better prepared. And even if you didn't feel quite warm and fuzzy about the interview, you hit all the points of the question. Don't be afraid to ask the panel or the interviewer, can you please repeat that question, or can you repeat this part of the question? If there's additional information, I know if any of my folks are watching this, there's part of a hiring process coming up. There's a whole section on there that says additional information if candidate asks. It's not given, it's additional. So if they ask, say, okay, well, what am I getting for this particular assignment, or what are the conditions on the Charlie side of the building? Okay, well, they might think, oh crap, I forgot to do my 360, but they might ask about certain things that might not have been included, or hey, what's the update from the communication center, or anything. It could be a whole variety of things. So the bottom line is, I think all the sage advice that's been given tonight is good, but there's always more questions that can be asked. I certainly encourage people to reach out. Talk to people in the corporate world too. They do a lot of interviews, and not that we're corporate, but it puts you in a different mindset. So with all that, I'll just kind of land the plane on things to say. I remember when I first got promoted, I promoted compared to a lot of the people in the department. I was young. I was the youngest guy on the shift. Most of these guys raised their service, and now all of a sudden, I'm their lieutenant. That's a very humbling experience. So, don't be afraid to go to them for advice. Understand who the leaders of that. Just because you got the glitter shit on your collar, you might not be the leader of that shift. You might have to go to that person and understand this is the one who's been around, who's suffered the slings and arrows of this policy, that policy. They've been in and out of another 5,000 more calls than you have. So talk to them. Don't discount them and all of a sudden put yourself on that pedestal. Remember, you work with people. They don't work for you. They work with you. And that goes all the way up the chain. So with that, before I kick it back over to you, Ben, Chief Gladwell, I just want to say, really, really appreciate you being on and sharing your knowledge and experience with everybody. Again, Jimmy's somebody I have just a world of respect for in the fire service. And we've kind of come up in the fire service together. And I think you've done pretty well. I would say, and absolutely, please reach out to any of us, but especially I know Chief Gladwell always makes himself available. He's just that kind of a guy because he has that training and that planting the tree mindset. But I just can't tell you how much we appreciate and respect what you've done for the fire service, Jimmy, and being here tonight. So with that, I'm going to kick that back over to Ben. And our brother Mike Hickman came on, so I'm glad to see things worked out for him too. But Ben, I'm going to kick it back over to you. But Thank you, Jimmy. Love you, brother.
Thanks, guys. First, I just want to acknowledge Hickman. It's a good thing we've got this on. It's all recorded, so the next time that you can go back and watch it, even if you're sitting on the toilet. So thanks. We're a little unsure what to do about that, but hey, glad everything came out okay. But as we're wrapping up, first I want to say, it has been an honor to be a part of all of these webcasts with Trevor and Bobby, to be a part of Strike the Box, and then to be able to sit here with Chief Gladwell, and to be in the position that I am in the Salisbury Fire Department. I've been mentored by all three of these individuals, and I think it's interesting if you go back and you listen to Chief John Tall talk about his leadership and where he's been through the fire service and where we are today in the Salisbury Fire Department. You listen to Chief Gladwell's comments on where the Salisbury Fire Department is today and how we're progressing to where Chief Tall sees the department going, is that you see it's all in the same direction. It's all the same kind of thing, planting the tree for the younger generations to sit in the shade of that tree. Like Chief Tall said a couple episodes back, it's investing in the future. And that's exactly what we're talking about here today. And I would suggest that a lot of the people that you see wearing white shirts in the Salisbury Fire Department, a lot of the people that you see wearing the brass and the collar pins and leadership positions in the Salisbury Fire Department have been mentored by John Tall. And that I think that speaks to his mindset again of investing in the future and to his mentoring and developing us. Gotta give a shout out back to him, and obviously a shout out again to these three great gentlemen from me again being mentored by them. I do want to throw up before we close out this comment from Jason Bloom. Bloomy, great comment. There's as much of an important it is to have a formal education. There's a huge part of your service that is learned while on the job. And I think we kind of touched on it. We didn't touch on it as much as we did during our practice session or our trial. But the sweat equity was the term that we used. It's great if you've got the degrees. It's great if you've got the classes, the checks in the box. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you haven't had the time on the job, if you haven't run the calls, you haven't dealt with the individuals that may be a little challenging, if you haven't done all of that, the degrees and the training, it's great, but it's not helpful. It's not what's going to get you through. So take that time, learn your people, invest in them, mentor them, build them up. there's not much I have to offer for that these guys haven't already mentioned. So with that, like I said, we're going to close it out, and we're going to go to our little slides. So again, a special thanks to Deputy Chief Jimmy Gladwell of the Salisbury Fire Department. We really appreciate everything that you've done for. Well, I really appreciate everything that you've done for me. We appreciate you joining us tonight. For the Strike the Box folks, if you aren't following us on social media, here's all of our stuff on there. So please go give us a like, give us a follow. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's our website. So if you've missed a previous Thirsty Thursday, I'm not going to call anybody out on missing Thirsty Thursdays, but Jimmy Gladwell, if you've missed one, that's where you can go. We have a link in our menu across the top for Thirsty Thursdays. And then if you guys have, if you've gotten something out of this, and we truly hope that you have, you gotten something from this webcast or from our previous webcasts, and you want to reach out, let us know how it went, how things are going. Shoot us an email. There's our email address, striketheboxtraining@gmail.com, and let us know. It's always great to hear from folks that we've had a little impact on. Like I said, one thing that I've learned, if I had a nickel for every time that I've heard it, invest in the future, I'd be a millionaire and I wouldn't have to work. Thanks, Chief Tall. But let us know, if you're getting something from this, we'd love to hear it. And, it just helps us, it's a little bit of motivation for us to keep going and keep doing what we're doing. Not that we need a whole lot, but, it is helpful. So with that, we're working on what we're going to be doing next week. 2 weeks from now. So please watch the social media, watch the website, see what's coming up next. If you've been watching with us for about an hour and a half now, if you haven't gotten enough, I would urge you to head over to National Rescue Consultants on Facebook. They also do a webcast on Thursdays. This week they're talking with a gentleman from Rescue 5 in New York City. So go over and join those guys, watch them. And see what they've got going on. They've got some great stuff that comes out. But other than that, that's all we've got. Thanks for joining us. Cheers, brothers. It's always good. Little Eastern Shore champagne. Everybody stay safe. Good luck. And we look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks.